The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 3 hours, I'm going to be your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 11 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network, all our broadcast affiliates, and the TalkStreamLive.com site. If you'd like to send an email, studio@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV, and our website, where you can find out what we've done in the past, what we're doing today in the present, and where we intend on going in the future, www.xzoneradiotv.com. And our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/X Zone Radio TV. Wow, what a night it's going to be, X Zone Nation. We're starting the night off with a bang. My first guest tonight is Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer. And I always get it mixed up because my brother's name is Anthony Mark. So, whenever I get my friend on here, Mark Anthony, it's always a little bit of a challenge. But you know what? I'm up to it. He's also known as the psychic lawyer. Also as the Psychic Explorer. He's the author of the award-winning international bestsellers Never Letting Go and Evidence of Eternity. He is world-renowned fourth-generation psychic medium who communicates with spirits. Mark is an Oxford-educated attorney licensed to practice law in Florida, Washington, D.C., and before the United States Supreme Court. Why don't we just get rid of Hillary and Donald and put Mark up there? I think that's a pretty damn good idea. Why didn't I think of this before? Mark, can we do it in 76 days?
Sure.
All right.
I mean, I don't think I could screw things up worse than either of them.
No, but you know what? I think it would be super having you in the White House because, my God, Mark, you would know what was going on before they even thought of doing it.
That's kind of scary, isn't it? No,
my friend. I know you and I respect you. I think this is... Hell, Mark, come up here to Canada, for God's sake.
Well, I don't have any political ambitions. I like what I'm doing, helping educate people about the afterlife and going on the speaking tours that I'm doing. But I do know, and I know that we've discussed this on several occasions, Rob, that over 1/3 of U.S. presidents have had psychic advisors, including the current president, and it's not unusual for world leaders of many different nations to have psychic advisors. So we've been part of the political process since the days of the pharaohs.
Well, could we say that throughout history, there's always been a wizard, there's always been an astrologer? It seems that, that psychics, wizards, and astrologers have always been the secret behind the success of a throne, or in this case, a presidency.
Oh, that's a good way of putting it. One of the topics that I discuss in various lectures, we call it the psychics behind the thrones, and it's about psychic advisors to kings and emperors, presidents, powerful people. In fact, J.P. Morgan said that millionaires do not consult psychics, but billionaires do. So there's nothing unusual about powerful and influential people. I mean, we know that Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Cleopatra, various kings throughout European history, certainly the court of China, India, the Egyptian pharaohs, all used to consult with oracles. And, there's wisdom in the counsel of many.
Sure.
I mean, if you put all of your eggs in any one basket, I think that you're making a mistake.
Unless you're
But
the Easter Bunny.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And we also saw, though, that it can be a complete disaster, because we know that Adolf Hitler used to determine when to launch offensives. An offensive on the basis of astrology. And there was, I think it's during the Battle of Stalingrad, which is the turning point where the Soviet Union began clobbering the Germans, that he wouldn't make a move because Mercury was in retrograde, and that gave the window of opportunity for Stalin's forces to annihilate an entire German army. So sometimes you have to be a little less esoteric and a bit more earthbound, but it never hurts to listen to what your council of wise men and women say.
Well, with the two presidential candidates that are hogging the airwaves these days, I think that Uranus, or their Uranus, has a lot to do with what they're talking about.
Yeah, it seems like instead of Mercury in retrograde, we may be stuck with Venus and Uranus. But and certainly, if I've offended anyone, I'm sorry. But this certainly is one of the most entertaining elections that I've ever seen. And perhaps we've finally degenerated to the point where substance has given way to entertainment. I don't know. And I think that, in the United States, that both parties, Republicans and the Democrats, have failed the American people miserably. And that it's time maybe this election's doing this. Maybe this is shaking the establishment on both sides of the aisle to the core, and making the parties and the people wake up and say, hey, our system's broken. We need to fix it. So let's hope for the best, and let's hope that whoever gets elected steps up to the plate and does the best job possible.
I find it ironic that the two mascots, if I can call them that, of the parties are an elephant and a jackass.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? And the other thing, because I watch BBC America, I watch CNN, I watch MSNBC, I watch everything, and all the polls say that the two people running are the two most hated politicians in the United States, and that's just amazing. Is it just anger? Is it if you vote for this one, I'm going to back that one? It's just a really, really fascinating process to watch. And I'm of the opinion that that whatever happens is supposed to happen, and that doesn't necessarily mean a good thing. And we have to be very, very careful. And I think it's important that in Canada, in the U.S., in Britain, and in the democracies around the world, that there is a separation of powers.
Yes.
And it's really bad when you look at a country like North Korea or Iran, where all power is vested in one person. Then you get these tyrannical dictatorships. And I recall years ago when I was a kid, I was in the Soviet Union. And I was, because I've always studied politics and religion, and I was on this trip, and we were in the Soviet Union. And our guides, I used to refer to them as products of the state, because they're always sitting there telling how Marxism and the Soviet way was better than the West and all this. And I cracked a comment, about how I'd rather be exploited by capitalists than shared equally by communists. And the and the product of the state, who was our guide that day, he said, "Remember, you are still in Soviet Union. Watch what you say." I said, "Yeah, but yesterday you were telling us that the Soviet Constitution guaranteed the same rights that the American Constitution does when it comes to freedom of speech." And he replied, and I'll never forget this. He goes, "Yes, there is freedom of speech in Soviet Union, but it's like, so what's the difference between the Soviet Constitution and the United States Constitution?" And he said, "Freedom after you make speech." And I know I'm laughing now, but at the time I was horrified, and then realizing, I am in Moscow. So
You see, you've got all the criteria to become president of the United States. You've traveled the world. You understand politics. You're a psychic. You're a lawyer. You've got it all, Mark.
well,
Mark. I'm just imagining a stadium full of people yelling, Mark. It's either that or it's a bunch of dogs that have hair lips. Mark.
It could be, but if either of the candidates are listening, I am certainly available to talk to them, because certainly our world's in a mess right now. It's in a mess. But Rob, it's very easy for us to say that. But you're in Canada, I'm in Florida.
Yep.
This radio show is being broadcast all over the world. I mean, this is a technological miracle, what we're doing right now. And I think what's happening is that if something horrible happens in Afghanistan, which it did earlier today with the attack on the American university, and then there's the earthquake in Italy, and then we could go all over the world to terrible things, because we are able to instantaneously get access to things going on all over the globe. When were the good old days? I mean, it certainly wasn't during the Depression. Okay, and it wasn't during the days of the Roman Empire when people were enslaved. It wasn't during the medieval era during the bubonic plague. I mean, when were the good old days? Because humans' inhumanity to other humans has been a constant, and it is the spiritual teachers like the Krishnas and Buddha and Jesus and Gandhi and Lao Tzu, who were telling people that we have to rise above that type of negativity. But the fact of the matter is, human history is fraught with conflict and plague and terror. But the fact is, and maybe I'm an eternal optimist, I do believe that the light is there. It is part of and accessible to all of us. The problem is, many people tend to block the light. So, I'm an optimist when it comes to, I think in the long run, we're going to be okay. It's just a rough ride until we get there.
Can you just imagine how this would have played out going back to the birth of Christ if there was Twitter? Like tweet, angel spotted over manger in Bethlehem. Tweet.
Yeah, Messiah born, film at 11.
Right. Virgin gives birth to Savior. Ha, ha, ha.
Yeah, well, that's a very interesting thought. There was a book, I think it was Gore Vidal wrote about 20 years ago or so. And I read it, and I think Gore Vidal's a decent author, but it was called Live from Golgotha, and it was about people being able to go back in time, and CNN and all these other people were filming the crucifixion. And it was a big spin on religion, and it turned out that Jesus wasn't who we thought he was. It was actually Judas who was nailed to the cross. It was this really convoluted, bizarre story. And it showed what that would be like. So that would be a fascinating scenario. And what if or when if, depending on how you believe, the Messiah, the Savior, Jesus came back? In today's terms, I mean, certainly there would be media coverage. I mean, if somebody was going around curing and performing miracles, that would get a lot of media attention.
It sure would.
But then you'd also get probably the evangelicals and the people who are supposed to be believing in this person, then turning into the modern day Pharisees, which would somehow end up having him put to death. And then 300 years from now, people be wearing little hypodermic needles around their neck instead of a cross, because he was lethally injected. And I don't mean to be facetious about that, but when you never know. And media would be part of that.
Sure, because in the media, if it don't bleed, it don't lead. And of course, they'd love a story like that. I just hope that when and if Jesus comes back, he's actually Flip Wilson. Because we all need a good laugh once in a while.
Well, I would imagine that Jesus, aside from being a powerful public speaker, probably works some humor into his talks. He was probably very uplifting
Yeah.
and energized people. I was at I like to go to different churches, and there's this one church, and I won't name any names because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Right.
There's this one church I always wanted to go to just because it's a beautiful structure. And I went on a Christmas Eve, and I was all excited to be at Christmas Eve service.
Ooh.
And the minister came out and started this, "You're bad, you're bad,
Oh,
you're
no.
evil, you're bad." And I'm sitting there, and it's like, hey, buddy, I'm thinking, it's Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
The place was packed. It was standing room only. All these people had given up their Christmas Eve to go there to hear how awful they are, how terrible they are. They must repent. And I'm like, man, really missing the point. You need to be giving a talk about why we're here, the beauty of this,
Exactly.
redemption, make people feel good.
Yeah.
Because number one, they're going to contribute more to the collection basket than trying to make him feel bad. And number two, you want people to come back to feel good. This whole negativity, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, I think really, really taints religion, because the whole part, the God that I understand is energetic and filled with love and light and healing and is inspiring. Doesn't make me want to jump off a bridge because I dislike myself.
Yeah. And then you go home and celebrate Christmas. Oh, to hell with it.
Yeah, it's like, what the hell are we talking about God in heaven for? It's Christmas. Give me my materialistic gifts, So
yeah.
It just is amazing. And you know what? Halfway through his "you're bad, you're bad, you're bad" sermon, because I was waiting for him to take an upward turn,
yeah.
I got up and walked out. I said, I've had enough of this. I've had enough.
Well, there you go.
And I went home and I lit a bunch of Christmas candles, and I was with my family, and we felt really good.
And you got the gun ready to shoot some reindeer, right?
You don't see too many of them in Florida.
Hey, listen, Mark, the last time you were with us, we were talking about you were going to be at the Sedona Spirit Symposium that was held in June, and then you were also going to be in Lilydale in July. How did that go?
Oh, they were great. The Spirit Symposium was wonderful because we had 4 speakers, myself included, where we were presenting scientific theories to support the existence of an afterlife, and also scientific explanations of consciousness, which is what scientists refer to, what people of faith call the soul. It was a good group of people that came. Sedona, just a beautiful, beautiful location for that. Lilydale, I can't say enough good things about. It was my first appearance at Lilydale, and the Lilydale Assembly, they just were so sweet and welcomed me with open arms. It's a beautiful venue location. I highly recommend to anyone listening, put on your spiritual must-do list a visit to Sedona and a visit to the Lilydale Spiritualist community in upstate New York. They're both incredibly beautiful in very bucolic settings, and they couldn't be more different. Sedona is these amazing rock formations, and the vortex is there because of the strong electromagnetic content. And the reason that the mountains are orange is because of the iron with the electromagnetic conductivity. And Lilydale is a fascinating place because it was founded in the 1890s during the probably the peak of the age of spiritualism, where people were beginning to get away from traditional religions and started embracing mediumship and the ability to communicate with spirits without all the "you're bad, you're bad, you're bad" stuff that fundamentalist religions are so paranoid about, the fact that we can all communicate with our loved ones on the other side. And so it's this really cool little Victorian town, and it's very charming, and it's populated almost entirely by psychics and mediums. So it's kind of like Psychic Mayberry. It's really neat, really beautiful. I highly recommend it, and I look forward to returning there next summer. I believe we're already in discussions with them about me returning there to present again.
That's great. You also have a Psychic Explorer Mystical Mind cruise coming up that we've been talking about here on the show, October 22nd to 27th. How is that going, Mark?
Oh, it's going really well. A lot of people are signing up for it. The Mystical Mayan cruise leaves out of Fort Lauderdale, like you said, on October 22nd, and then cruises to first the exotic Costa Maya and then to the island of Cozumel. And there are optional excursions, and I'm picking out the ones I want to do because I want to see the Mayan ruins. But on the 2 sea days, the voyage there and then the voyage back, in the morning, in the later morning after breakfast, I'll be giving a presentation on Mayan mysticism, spirituality, and culture. And I've been working on this presentation for several months, and I've done lots of research, and it's going to be fun. I mean, it's not going to be like watching algebra on stage. I promise it's going to be a lot of zap action, a lot of surprises, and then in the afternoon, I will be giving a gallery reading, which means I'll be connecting random audience members with loved ones in spirit, and then we'll be in the Yucatan for 2 days, and then on the way back in the morning I'll be giving a talk on quantum consciousness, which is a big part of what I talked about the last time I was on your show. We talked about the scientific proof for the existence of an afterlife based on what quantum physics and several physicists are now saying. And then in the afternoon, I'll be doing another gallery presentation. I want to make sure that all the people on the cruise have the night free because we're going to be on the Royal Princess, and it is one of the most beautiful ships afloat. It's one of Princess Cruises' brand new ships, and it's supposed to be one of the most technologically advanced in the world. So I don't want people drinking before my presentations, but after the gallery event, party on. And because this cruise is going to be, it's going to be spiritual. It's going to be uplifting. It's going to be healing. It's going to be an adventure with visiting the Mayan ruins. But you know, Rob, in my work helping people cope from grief, one of the things that bereaved people fall into is feeling that if they're miserable and unhappy, they are somehow showing respect and loyalty to the loved one who's died. And I'm not belittling or putting down in any way someone who does that, because it's a very normal and a natural feeling. And in a lot of my presentations, or in all my presentations, I try to interject humor to let people know that it's okay to laugh again. It's okay to see colors again. It's okay to smile again, because one of the greatest healers of all is laughter and having fun. And so that's what the Mystical Mayan cruise is going to encompass, all of that. And that all you can find about that. And also, Rob, we're running a special now. There's discounts. If people book if you book 2 cabins, they get a free pass to my events, because my events are in addition to the cruise.
Sure.
And people can find out about that on my website, which is evidenceofeternity.com.
All right. All right,
So,
Mark, I've got to take my break at the bottom of the hour. Please stand by. X Zone Nation. Mark Anthony is our special guest. When we come back, we're going to be talking to him about the light of quantum consciousness. For more information about Mark and the wonderful cruise that he just talked about, www.evidenceofeternity.com. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. Mark Anthony and I will return on the other side of this short break, so whatever you do, do not go away. And welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. Mark Anthony is my special guest. His website is evidenceofeternity.com. Mark, let's talk a little bit about quantum consciousness. Now, you've indicated that Evidence of Eternity brings spirit communication into the 21st century. How does it do that?
my study of quantum physics, of frequency, of energy, and of spirit communication, I've redefined a lot of terminology. I don't refer to what I do as mediumship. It is interdimensional communication. And I explained the way we are living in the material world, which is one dimension, and the other side is a different frequency. Now, string theory and Dr. Michio Kaku, who's one of the originators of string theory, recently came out and said that it appears that the universe is the product of intelligent design, and that the Big Bang was actually something happened before the Big Bang. And so what we're seeing is that there's not just one dimension. There are several. There's not one universe, there's several multiverses. So in my study of spirit communication, I've seen that we are able to communicate with the other side the way that sometimes AM radio overlaps with FM radio. So we live in AM, they live in FM, and henceforth interdimensional communication. I also explain about consciousness and the collective consciousness of the other side. I explain several new concepts such as multiple meaning messages and frequency beacons, and I do this all with a scientific basis. And I show Rob how people of science and people of faith are not diametrically opposed, but they're actually on the same page, and we're now beginning to see that the more science is realizing that there's more to the universe than what meets the eye.
All right, now let me just quote something here. Einstein once said, "We are all beings of light." Now that seems like a statement which is as much spiritual as it is scientific.
Einstein,
Yeah.
he's one of my heroes. One of the great honors of my life, I guess. I was at Princeton University and I snuck into what used to be his classroom, and nobody was in there. I was just like, oh my God, this is Albert Einstein's classroom. But he understood that there, and one of the things that Einstein said, he's one of the fathers of quantum physics, is not only that we're all light beings, but that there is no matter. There's only frequency, and things vibrate at different frequencies. So the material world dimension, which is what I refer to where we are, vibrates at a lower, slower frequency, which is why we perceive objects around us as solid. And then spirits are pure energy. And Einstein also theorized that light is both particles and waves, and his theories have now been proven that light has both the properties of particles and waves. To extrapolate this even further, Rob, scientists have found in the last several decades that our cells in our body communicate using flashes of light, and these are referred to as biophotons. And each cell is capable of 100 flashes of light per minute. So we've got this matrix of light flashing through our body, and everything depends on light. If it were not for the sun, this planet would be a frozen chunk.
Yeah.
And the light not only creates the warmth, but it allows there to be life on this earth. And think about everything that we eat is a concentrated form of sunlight.
That's right.
If we, photosynthesis, plants, or if we eat animals that eat plants. So everything depends on light. And
except
go ahead.
Except mushrooms.
Well, but they're also feeding on decaying matter that was that had to grow because of light.
Yeah.
The whole point is that every great spiritual teacher, from the pharaohs through Krishna, Jesus, Buddha, all the way up till today, depict God or describe God in terms of light.
That's true.
We know from the near-death experience studies that when a person's consciousness separates from their body, in other words, they die and their consciousness leaves their body, they talk about encountering the light. And then they're resuscitated and they come back. So if God is or we're able to perceive God as light, and it has been long said by many faiths that we're all cells in the body of God, and now we're seeing that the same light is not only in our cells, but it's generated by our cells. So there's this connectivity from a cellular microscopic level all the way up to the universe itself, which is all light. And this isn't some ridiculous notion. This is based on quantum physics, because everything in existence, whether it's gamma rays, the sun, the space between the sun and planets, the air we breathe, the water, you, me, the desk, the microphone, the radio waves that this is being transmitted over, everything is composed of quanta, which is a particle smaller than electrons, neutrons, and protons, quanta, which is electromagnetic energy. So everything is energy, and as Einstein correctly pointed out, there is no matter, there's just different wavelengths, different frequencies, and that's why energy is everything. God is energy, and this would explain how God transcends space and time and is interconnected with everything everywhere. And this is very exciting discoveries. And physicists in Moscow at the Lebedev Institute, at at Oxford, at Cambridge, at the Max Planck Institute in Germany, at MIT, at Yale, at Brown University, University of Arizona, the Japanese Physics Institute. Physicists all over the world are now saying that you cannot exclude the spiritual from the scientific, and that the quantum field, the electrical activity in our brain, which is our consciousness, is capable of remaining coherent after the body and the organ that we call the brain dies. In other words, life is everlasting.
Son of a gun. What about the pineal gland? How does that gland influence or affect the ability to perceive not only light but spirits?
The pineal gland is a fascinating piece of machinery in our head. And for our colleagues and your listeners who practice yoga, everyone's heard of the third eye chakra, which is in the middle of your forehead. Well, a couple inches behind the middle of your forehead, inside of your brain, is the pineal gland, and it's one of the endocrine glands. The pineal gland regulates our body, or rather our brain's ability to perceive light. There we go again with the light perception in both the physical and I believe the spiritual sense. But it gets even better than that, Rob, because the pineal gland contains magnetite and calcite crystals and generates an electromagnetic field. There we go back again to electromagnetic energy, which everything is composed of on the subatomic levels of quanta. And the pineal gland also regulates our brain wave frequencies. So what that means is right now you and I are in the beta state. That's the conscious state. Then when you start to go to sleep and drift off, you go from beta to alpha. And then when you go to deeper sleep is theta. It is on the alpha-theta border where brainwave frequency surges. And that's why many people who are in a sleep state receive a visitation from a loved one who has passed, because their brainwave frequency emerges from the AM radio that we live in, and the spirits who are in the FM radio frequency band of the other side, and I'm using that as an example only, they bring their frequency down and you get a frequency match. So the pineal gland is the physiological basis for psychic activity. And it is being studied, and we're just scratching the surface of everything that it's capable of.
Where do you think the discoveries that we're experiencing through the great work of quantum physicists are going to lead us to, Mark?
I think it's going to lead us to the discovery of God. I think it's going to lead us to conclusive scientific proof that there is an afterlife. And you know, you're in the paranormal field. As a psychic medium, I have to put up with the cynics and the religious fanatics who are saying, you know, I'm evil, or that, you know, there is no God. And you know what, everyone has a right to their opinion.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is, and I love it when I hear these scientists or science types say, oh, well, I believe in science, I don't believe in God. Well, the fact of the matter is, science is not a stagnant thing. And just because the technology of today cannot prove the existence of a soul does not mean that it is not possible as technology increases. For example, 100 years ago in 1916, Albert Einstein theorized gravitational waves existed if two black holes collided, and that could be thousands of light years away, yet the energy from those gravitational waves could affect Earth and us. Well, earlier this year, the LIGO, the Large Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, which is run by NASA, proved the existence of gravitational waves as the result of two black holes colliding. Now, it took 100 years for that scientific theory to now become scientific fact.
Right.
So when you get people that are physicists, who traditionally scientists scoff at religion and the afterlife, who are now saying we need to rethink this. And it comes down to the laws of physics teach us energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. And there's a quantum field, an electromagnetic field in our brain, and we know now that consciousness, who and what we are, appears to be much more complex than the carbon-12 resonator floating in salt water, in other words, our brain, is capable of producing. So I think that, to answer your question directly, where all this is going is proving that the consciousness, the soul, pre-exists and then exists after the body, that life is everlasting, and that there is a greater power that interconnects all of us. And Rob, for the benefit of our science fiction friends and colleagues, God is almost closer to George Lucas's Star Wars The Force than it is an insecure, narcissistic white guy sitting on a throne smiting people.
I agree with you. I really do. Here's a very simple question for you. Okay. Does the brain create consciousness or just host consciousness?
It appears that it just hosts consciousness. There's three different schools of thought on consciousness. One is that it's created by the brain, but that's kind of being discounted. One is that it hosts the consciousness, and the other one is that consciousness has existed all along. So the way I look at it is what Professor Hans-Peter Dohr of the Max Planck Institute in Germany said, is that the brain is a formatting instrument. And think of your brain as a hard drive, and who and what you are is the information that has been uploaded onto the hard drive. And then when you die, that information doesn't die. It's merely transferred to, Microsoft Cloud or Dropbox or to a thumb drive. In other words, the information on the hard drive continues on even when the hard drive fails.
So are we basically in a living holograph that we are creating as we go along?
I've heard it put that way many times, and this is where I think a connection with spirituality helps us understand this. And in communication with spirits, I've done over 10,000 readings.
Wow.
And let's say that 3 to 4 to 5 spirits come through in each reading. So, I've communicated with quite a few spirits in the tens of thousands. And also in my study of the world religions, it appears that we come into this world, this consciousness attaches itself to the brain, to this body, so that we can experience things as a finite being that you cannot experience when you're in a purely energetic state. Because when you're in a purely quantum consciousness state, in other words, a spirit, you don't get old, you don't get sick, you don't die, you're not sad, because you're on a higher vibration and frequency. And I'm not sure why, Rob, okay, and I don't pretend to have all the answers. I have some insights and some glimpses, but there's a reason why we come into this world, and it appears to be a privilege. Now, a lot of days living in the material world does not feel like a privilege. And especially for people who've lost a loved one or who are coping with horrible illnesses and all types of problems. But there is a reason why we have to experience these things. And it's very easy to get into the, oh, woe is me, and this is miserable, and how can there be a God? But we're also given, for a limited period of time, a finite perspective. So we are judging the infinite on the basis of a finite glimpse. So there's a reason why we're here. And there's a reason why we go through negative things. And it appears to be related to what we're going to take from this as we transition back to an immortal state.
Do you believe that we keep coming back time after time after time after time? I've had guests come on the show tell me that they've been reincarnated over 1,000 times. And, that explains why I'm so tired all the time. But when it comes to the reality or the realistic possibility of reincarnation, what's your take on it, Mark?
I saw a bumper sticker recently that says, "I don't believe in reincarnation, and I didn't in my last life either." And it's funny because, when you see like spiritual humor, or, another one's, "I'm an atheist, I swear to God." But I believe in reincarnation.
Yeah.
In fact, in Evidence of Eternity, I write about it in great detail.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been case studies. I brought up 2 very prominent case studies, and there's been more since my book has been published, because it's more of an openly discussed topic. I believe that we come in through a succession of lifetimes, and the question is, well, does it ever stop? And eventually it will stop in the earth, in this earth material world dimension. But does that mean we go get to hang out with Jesus and the apostles and God or Vishnu or whoever? And when I've asked spirits that, because spirits always tell me that reincarnation exists, people that go through near-death experiences,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much all of them say, yeah, reincarnation exists. That's part of what they got. It appears that when we're done with this dimension,
Yeah.
go to another one and start a new cycle. And I remember the one time in a reading I said, "Seriously, are you telling me this like never ends?" And I got the distinct impression that the spirits were kind of laughing at me like, "Dude, you really don't get it." Because I don't. And I don't know if anyone can grasp the enormity of what we are in the infinite sense.
That's kind of scary in one aspect, really cool in another aspect, but damn it, it makes me tired.
Yeah, it's like, all right, where's the fields of milk and honey and the
Exactly.
streets paved with gold, and the angels playing harps and all that, and the spirits tell me that they tell me that what it's like
Mm-hmm.
to be in the light, to go into these higher frequencies. And I did write about this in Evidence of Eternity, and I'll describe it here for the listeners. Spirits have given me a glimpse of what it feels like, and it is so much energy flowing through my body. It is the most incredible feeling. It's like I don't have a body. It's like a weightlessness. There's no pain. There's no anguish. It's this euphoric surge where you feel part of the all. It is just this amazing sensation, and I can handle it for about 4 to 5 seconds. And the best way I can describe it, Rob, it's like I'm a single wire, and all of a sudden I am now trying to handle all of the electricity that goes into Manhattan. It's just too much, and it's for a second glimpsing the all. So what a spirit experiences is absolutely incredible, and it is so much greater than any of these archetypes of floating around on clouds and playing harps and milk and honey and all of these things. And not to put down people who believe that, because the folks that wrote the Bible, the human beings who wrote the Bible, were attempting to explain and understand the infinite through the experiences and terminology of the day and the time that it was written.
Exactly. And I think that a lot of people forget that. Oh.
They do. They do. I mean, people tell me I have a friend. He's quite intelligent. He's an attorney, and I was saying, oh well, there's an alternate version of Genesis, which appeared in the Quran, and there's another gospel, the Gospel of James. He goes, well, I'll stick with the originals. It's like, oh, you'll stick with, well, which original from which ecumenical council? And he's giving me this look like, huh? And the really surprising thing is a lot of people don't understand the history of the religions that they profess to follow. And on the other hand, as long as people use their faith for the purposes of peace, love, and understanding, then they're on the right path. Where it goes sour, Rob, is when people use a belief system as a justification for anger, bigotry, hatred, or violence. Because then it's not about God, it's about their own ego-driven agendas. And ego also stands for edging God out.
Oh, I like that. Speaking about edging out, we've got about 2 minutes left in the segment. What are your final thoughts for the X-Zone Nation tonight, Mark?
Well, I think everybody ought to at least check out the Mystical Mayan Tour on my website.
Oh, that was a cheap plug. That was a cheap plug.
It was a cheap plug, yeah. But you know what, though, Rob? It's going to be also a forum where we get to discuss these topics in greater detail on a one-on-one basis. But the other thing I'd like to say about the X-Zone is you provide an incredible format and forum, rather, for people of all types of spiritual backgrounds to come here and talk about what they believe in a non-judgmental atmosphere. And I think that is your ministry, that is your calling, and I think that what you do and the service you provide is a gift from God.
Oh my gosh, I don't know what to say to that, Mark, except thank you.
You are more than welcome. I really appreciate you having me on. I always love being on the X-Zone. It's a great show, and I'm hoping next year to be in Toronto and possibly Ontario, because when I was in Lilydale, I met several Canadian spiritualists who invited me to speak at their churches. So I'm hoping that we can put that together, because I'd love to actually be in the studio with you and do a show there. I think that would be a lot of fun.
We'd love to have you here, Mark. You always have an open invitation, my good friend. And in case I don't have the opportunity of speaking to you before you go on your cruise, be safe, have a good time, and you'll have to come back after the cruise, after you've relaxed a bit from relaxing, and let us know how it went.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rob. And to all the listeners, keep listening to the X-Zone, and may God bless all of you. And may the force of quantum consciousness be with you.
Give our listeners your website one more time, please, friend.
evidenceofeternity.com.
Mark Anthony, take care of yourself, my good friend, and enjoy yourself on the trip, because heaven knows you've deserved it.
Thank you, Rob. God bless you, man.
God bless you too, my friend. Good night now.
Good night.
X-Zone Nation, Mark Anthony was my guest this hour. And Mark is going to be taking a great cruise. And you know what, X-Zone Nation? Visit the website, www.evidenceofeternity.com. That's www.evidenceofeternity.com. Now, I'll be back on the other side of this break, and with Adrian Blackwell, as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away.